I don't know if there would be any way to prove this statistically, but I have this personal belief that at some point in every person's life, whether maybe it's when they're in high school or college age, or they've kind of started their adulting life with maybe they buying a house, having kids, marriage, and all that good stuff, or even later in life, when they're starting to get older, one of those later seasons, maybe about to retire for those that retire. But I just believe that at some point, every person looks around at the world that we live in and thinks to themselves, wow, this is really messed up. Now, that said, what I figure probably could be proven statistically is just how few people actually decide to do anything about it. It seems like most people don't really want to make the world a better place, even though they recognize how jacked up things are. Like most people are either content to bury their heads in the sand and pretend like everything's okay, or a lot of people just will spend all their time whining to anybody that'll listen about the problems and not do anything to fix them, or even just lie to themselves and decide that nothing can be done, and so they just don't do anything. This is just the way it is. This is how it's going to be, and so they just kind of give up. But there are those few, statistically again, I think, that decide to join the fight. And many decide to work for nonprofits, different approaches to that, full-time, part-time, volunteers. And so if you're somebody that's considering making the world a better place, doing your part, getting in the fight, and joining a nonprofit, well, or even starting one, this video is for you. So let me start with a bit of a disclaimer. First of all, we're doing a lot of things in threes today, by the way, 3 bullet points for this. I've worked full and part-time and volunteered, all 3 approaches to participation in nonprofits for almost 25 years now, and I've even helped start a few. Secondly, most of the nonprofits that I have worked with, have been faith-based, and most identifying as Christian nonprofits. So I do want to be clear there. And the third and last point of my disclaimer is this video is in no way whatsoever intended to bash or promote any particular nonprofit. I won't even name names of nonprofits if I'm giving examples from my own experience or anything like that. Some are fantastic. Some are awful, just like for-profit organizations. Okay, so not bashing anybody, not promoting anybody with this video. I'm trying to help you make an informed decision. So I'm going to break this down into 3 sections for you. We're going to talk about pros, we're going to talk about cons, and we're going to talk about sort of the other considerations, recommendations that I have. I think I've got about 3 bullet points for each, and I'm going to work from my notes, so bear with me here. But we're going to start with the cons. Number one con when working for a nonprofit is that the salaries at nonprofits are typically at the bottom and may even be as much as well below market rate for any given position, especially those that would you'd kind of call individual contributor positions up to mid-management levels. Usually near that bottom of market, salary ranges, averages, or again, below that. And so it's important to note this if this is going to be a career move for you, if it'll be your family's primary source of income. 1 Timothy 5:18 reminds employers that the laborer is worthy of their wages. Okay, and I absolutely would encourage nonprofit leaders to consider this, to remember this when they are thinking about growing their staff or expanding their ministry or their nonprofit, investing into that type of growth, if they want to keep quality staff and ultimately be successful. Now that said, Matthew 21-8, Jesus shares a parable about some vineyard workers, and some of them weren't happy with their wages when they got paid at the end of the day because they felt that it wasn't fair compared to some other people who started later in the day and got paid the same amount. And kind of the point of this, what it reminds us is that, if you accept a subpar salary to do work, that's on you. The people that lead the nonprofit, that run it, the whatever, that make the salary decisions, if they're poor, that's on them. But if you accept that poor salary, that's really on you. I mean, you can always ask for a raise or move on. But just the point being, note that that's very common in a nonprofit. Nonprofits are reliant on donations, grants, things like that. So they're with those dependencies, a lot of times they have to be very good stewards with the funds they get, and so the salaries just might not be what you need or what you're looking for. Con number 2. Many nonprofits, there's a lack of competence with the staff. And in large part, that's due to the lower salaries. So many nonprofits will hire candidates lacking skills or level of professionalism even needed to do the job well. And the attitude is generally that a warm body is better than nothing, which is not a great leadership mindset. And it can, create a lot of frustration for those of you coming from, a more professional or corporate environment, expecting certain level of professionalism, certain, follow-up or whatever, certain skill sets, especially if you're well-trained, well-educated in your area of expertise. Oftentimes, you can run into an employee in a nonprofit that's aware, very aware, they may not admit it, but they're aware of their inadequacies, and they'll tend to get really defensive really quick, even when you're just asking for something like, a status of something. It's not easy to navigate. And the best response that I can, encourage you to have in these instances is one of grace and patience and understanding. They were hired to do the job. They're doing the best they can, cut them as much slack as possible. But I recognize it can be asking a lot at times. It can be very frustrating, but that's con number 2. A lot of times there's just a lack of the skills required to do, certain positions, certain jobs. Excuse me. The third big con is it's just really people. People. People can be mean and demanding and backstabbing jerks, and even at a nonprofit. Okay, it's just people. That's just people. It seems really surprising to those coming from the for-profit world where certain bad behavior might be expected, cutthroat, dog eat dog, getting ahead, ambition kind of thing, But, well, let me first say this. Specifically for Christian nonprofits, talking to you that already work there and those that are considering working at one of those, Colossians 3:23-24 reminds us or instructs us actually, to perform at a higher standard. Saying that whatever we do, we should do it for the Lord and not for people. And reminding us that that's who we serve. We serve the Lord ultimately. But that's not always going to be the case. And I do, strongly encourage anybody that works for specifically a Christian nonprofit to remember that and to do your best to represent King Jesus. But reality is, bottom line, if you're looking for perfection in an organization, you're going to have to go to one where there are no people, because people are imperfect, and that just doesn't exist. Okay, so don't be shocked the first time you go into a nonprofit and somebody's rude. Again, even a Christian nonprofit, I deal with these things on a regular basis. It's just people, and they need Jesus. Yes, the standards, the accountability should be higher, and it is for most people. Most people, I think, do recognize what they're doing and who they're doing it for. But even those are still people. They're likely going to have a bad day at some point. Okay. Enjoying our videos? Well, you can take this journey even further by checking out my book, The Way of the Christian Samurai, available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle formats. Give it a read, and if it ministers to you, leave us a review on Amazon to help us out. And for more information, visit our website at wayofthechristiansamurai.com. Thanks. Those are my top 3 cons. Now for the pros. Let me, that's better. Okay. Now for the pros. 3 pros. Nonprofits do make a difference in the world. They really do. And in big ways, the great thing is that there's likely a good nonprofit that you can partner with, join in for whatever cause or circumstance has really captured your heart, that you feel led to support and be a part of. If you love children, if you love animals, if you love the elderly, if you have a heart for homeless people or uneducated people or refugees or others that have been victimized in some way, it doesn't matter. There's almost certainly a place for you to shine light into the world already. You don't have to start a new nonprofit. I get why people do. They don't necessarily agree with how something's being done over here, and so they want to do a little differently, but with the same general end goal. I get it, but generally speaking, if you've got a heart for something, there's going to be a nonprofit available, and they do have a massive impact. And this is where we get into, I'm not promoting any nonprofit, but I could sit here and just name off several that I have been a part of and what that impact looks like. So just know that nonprofits do make a difference in the world, and they're not bound by some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the constraints that a for-profit company might be bound by. They're able to do more and more direct and more impactful things because they're probably not producing a widget and trying to sell a widget, right? That ultimately that widget may make somebody's life better, but a nonprofit is going to get that widget and get it in the hands of the people that need it, things like that. So just think along those lines. Definitely make a difference in the world. Number 2, we're talking about pros of working for nonprofits, is staff care. Staff care. While most nonprofits will, lack in salaries, a lot of them, many of them, make up for it in other ways and understand and value the staff, the people that are actually doing the work, actually accomplishing the mission. Not all, but most that I've worked with, that I've investigated, researched or whatever, really do get it, that it is the people that's doing the work. And so what they'll do is, in other ways besides salary, things that they can do that are more cost effective or maybe free, they'll provide programs and support and things like that. To help make up for the less than stellar paychecks. And just because they care, because they get it a lot of times, more so than perhaps a lot of for-profits. And so some of the programs might be benefits, or the things that they provide might be like your benefits, like additional PTO, additional time off, child care. Some places do that, provide those things. They might have like mental health services, support programs, counseling, group counseling, or specific support groups for specific needs. Some will have regular team connect activities, things like prayer groups and devotionals and team building activities, even if they're not a Christian nonprofit, things like that, or opportunities to get paid while you serve in your community, like volunteer days that you can do, things like that. They'll promote and encourage things like that. I know several nonprofit staff whose loyalty to the organization is greatly built on the care that they received when they were going through a really difficult season of life. That the people in that nonprofit rallied around them, and the support and the programs, the extra things that they needed, extra time off and extra support that the organization provided, and it helped them through some of the hardest times in their lives. And so the dedication is solidly there as a result of that. So that's a good one. Lastly, for the pros, again, this is dependent on the nonprofit, but even with those that don't specifically identify as Christian nonprofits, they provide the opportunity to do kingdom work. And so, if you're somebody who is considering this to bring glory to God, to honor Him, to further His kingdom, even a lot of those that don't identify as Christian do provide that opportunity through the work that they do or the services that they provide. Now, I don't believe that God wants your family to suffer to do kingdom work. I've heard several horror stories of men allowing their families to go hungry so that they could do what they believe that God was calling them to do. And to me, that doesn't feel like God. I don't believe that He wants your children to suffer, literally suffer. I mean, not getting the tennis shoes, the brand that they want, isn't suffering. I'm talking about going hungry. So keep that in mind. And I certainly 100% don't believe that He wants or expects you to endure abuse in a role, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit or any job. You need the money, you do the job, you put up with it until you find something better and move on. But literally, in spite of the imperfections in all organizations, when you're doing kingdom work, He's going to bless the work of your hand, and we'll see His will accomplished through you. So that's exciting and that's encouraging, especially in a nonprofit. I mean, there's even for-profits where you have opportunity to do kingdom work, and not everybody's called to fulfill their calling in a nonprofit. You might be in a for-profit and have the opportunity to minister to people through different methods, different ways, coffee breaks, inviting them to dinner, inviting them to church, just setting the example. Whatever that looks like. But we're talking about those considering working for a nonprofit. Okay, so I have 4 recommendations for anyone considering joining a nonprofit organization. So we've been doing things in threes. I got 4 of these, 4 recommendations for anyone considering joining a nonprofit organization. Number 1 is pray. That's the most important thing you can do in any situation when making any decision. But pray, hear from God about where he wants you to use your gifts and talents. He might have you do, just examples, animal rescue, right? I mean, that's godly work, right? I mean, some people might disagree, but I think it is. I love animals. He might want you to use your gifts and talents behind the scenes doing video for a ministry or pouring into the lives of children. For a long time, I had 2 careers. Literally, I had my full-time career, which was IT leadership, owned a company, and I had my part-time career was in ministry, and I kept them very separate. They were completely separate worlds to me. And one day in Bible college, I'm sitting there, and our instructor, I think he's the director of the Bible college, actually, he stops in the middle of teaching to call me out. He looks at me, and right in front of the whole class. It was embarrassing. But basically told me, he said that, that my identity, my professional identity, being in IT was hindering my ministry. And, I got to say, that changed my life. It really did. I mean, because today I still do IT work. Obviously this isn't IT, but I still do IT work. But I minister today with preaching and teaching like I'm doing now, and IT. IT isn't my career anymore. It's actually a part of my ministry for his kingdom. I've been able to use it. I use it in my 9-to-5 full-time ministry job all day, every day. I've been able to use it even in the field, in ministering with a church in another country, right? So that word from God, delivered through my instructor, hearing from God, it's critical. It's so critical to making the right decision of where you want to go. And sometimes you got to try things and kind of learn. Maybe you're not completely hearing from God, and you're thinking, I think it's young people. Maybe it's, babies. Maybe it's children. Maybe it's teenagers, whatever. And so sometimes you got to try things, but you got to hear from God. So pray, number 1 recommendation. Number 2 recommendation is research the salaries. Make sure you can afford to work someplace that you're thinking about working without having to have 2 jobs, because that happens, where the salaries are so bad that a lot of people have a side hustle just to make ends meet. Not to be hugely successful, but just to be able to pay their bills. So make sure you can afford to work there and meet all your financial obligations without having to work that second job. Salaries that are well below market. I'm not talking about, near the bottom of market, or, but well below market salaries are a good sign of poor leadership and poor business acumen that is required, is helpful for a successful organization. And so that's a red flag to me when the salaries are that bad. Even a nonprofit, is a business of sorts in many respects. So don't be fooled by the size of the organization or their impact statements. And I'm going to probably get some grief for this one, but if anyone says, as you're investigating this nonprofit, in regards to salaries especially, if anyone says something along the lines of God is your provider, that is a major red flag. Because while that is true, God is our provider. Okay, I'm not debating that. God is absolutely our provider. God provides our salaries, our paychecks, our means to pay our bills through an employer who is the one that actually signs the checks. What I've seen, what I've experienced is when people have that attitude when it comes to justification for poor salaries, it's just another, it's an excuse to pay poorly. And again, it's a poor reflection of the leadership in that organization. So again, I'm not saying that God's not our provider. He absolutely is. I'm saying that when it comes to work, if you're going to work for whether part-time or full-time, any sort of paid position in a nonprofit, God provides through the person that signs the check. So keep that in mind. All right. Number 3 recommendation is do all your homework. That's just one piece of it that I mentioned, called it out specifically, but do all your homework. Thoroughly research any nonprofit that you're considering joining. Okay, look at the fruit that they produce. Look at what they accomplish in the world, in reality. Look into the leadership the best you can. Research the people. Maybe they worked for other organizations. Maybe they've done some public speaking that you can find online. Maybe they've written some books or whatever. But investigate. Excuse me. The leadership. Look at their financials. Financials should be available to some extent online. There are websites that are dedicated to helping with this, and they give grades, and so might be a little skewed depending on their grading system, but there are numerous, I can think of like 3 or 4 websites that basically share the information. They do the research on the back end, share the information, so you see how an organization is structured, how they're spending the money that they take in, what their priorities are. Whenever possible, look at things like employee turnover at an organization, and if you can, ask current staff, about their experiences working there. Get some reviews, Google reviews even. Although online reviews just have a balanced approach to that, because typically online reviews are people complaining. People who are happy don't frequently post online reviews for some reason, which they should. But whatever kind of feedback you can get from the employees, but research. Make sure that the organization you're joining is legit, and it's that they get it, whatever it is. Okay. And then lastly, my recommendation is just go for it. Just go for it. Look, you're never going to change the world by sitting there watching this video. You got to do something. You got to get off your butt. All right. Sorry. Did I say butt? Yeah. Twice now. If you don't try, if you don't do something, the world's just going to stay as is and continue to get worse. So, you can always change your mind, try something different later, back, reverse, turn the car around, whatever. But go for it. Go for it. Do your research, do your homework, all those things. But if you can afford it, right? And, some people like the 2-income families or need the 2-income families. Some people can survive with less and have a 1-income family. If you've got any flexibility in what you're getting paid, then maybe the salaries aren't as big, important for you. But, approach it with grace. Just understand that, again, it's people. And yes, the people and nonprofits should hold themselves to a higher standard. But even the ones that do have I have a bad day sometimes. I'm occasionally, not very often, but occasionally I'm rude or short with people, or I get frustrated. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. So have some grace there, and just go for it. Healthy expectations, well-researched. Do something. Get off the couch. Get in the fight. All right. In conclusion, I would just say that many nonprofits really are worth the investment of time and your talents and other resources. Financial resources is more about giving than what we're talking about today, but many of them really are worth your support, whatever that winds up looking like. So just be wise and set those realistic expectations. So, and that's as you should when pursuing any job. And look, being a volunteer doesn't mean you take it, any less seriously than somebody that's getting paid, right? So all this stuff applies even if you're in specifically in Christian nonprofit world. Some utilize the terminology of unpaid staff, which is volunteer, but unpaid staff, the big difference typically is the person is invited to staff meetings. They're treated like staff with the authority of a staffer. But regardless of what role you're looking at, all of these things apply. I mean, if I'm going in as a volunteer part-time, maybe I'm retired, that's cool. I want to be active. I want to be a part of something bigger than me. I should still be, looking into what this organization pays their staff. That just gives us insight into, their growth strategy, into how they value employees, into their leadership and things like that. Okay. So all that taken into consideration, if you just approach it like you would or should any job, you probably won't go terribly wrong. Just want to make you aware of a few of the cool things and a few of the things that are commonly lacking, so to help you make an informed decision. So I do hope this has helped you as you consider being part of making the world a better place, whatever that looks like for you. I'm excited. I would love to hear from you if you work for a nonprofit, what your nonprofit does. It doesn't need to necessarily be a Christian nonprofit. If you're making the world a better place, I'd love to hear about it. I would. So please consider leaving some comments. And if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer. I don't know everything, but I have been working in the nonprofit world for a long time in various capacities. So if you have questions about something, please let me know. Don't ask me about a specific organization because, I'm not here to promote or bash. I might do that in other videos, but that's not the point of this video. And so, leave your questions, your comments. I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. And so just have a blessed day. And I will see you next time on Christ Bearer Ministries.